70s. Friday is looking great. The weekend is looking much cooler with sunshine. On the Money Matters Radio Network, I'm Mark Rosenthal.
My name is Dale Pazinski. I volunteer with United Way to help the homeless in my community learn computer skills and build a basic resume. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
September is National Preparedness Month, so it's the perfect time to ask yourself some questions like, how much food do you have on hand for an emergency? How would you get clean water if the tap went dry tomorrow? What would you do if a storm knocked out the power for a week? If you don't have good answers to those questions, that's okay, because right now, My Patriot Supply, the most trusted name in emergency preparedness, is making it simpler and more affordable than ever before. In honor of National Preparedness Month, we put together a comprehensive all-in-one kit that covers the emergency food, water filtration, heat, and backup power. Imagine the peace of mind you'll feel knowing all your bases are covered. And when you go to mypatriotsupply.com during September, not only will you find huge discounts on all of our preparedness essentials, you can even score over $1,500 worth of survival gear free when you stock up on a one-year food supply. Head to mypatriotsupply.com for details. That's mypatriotsupply.com.
You're locked into Money Matters Radio, 1120 AM WBNW. This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan. Mike, why is it so important for retirees to account for inflation in their planning?
Yeah, massively important, and I think any retiree over any course of history will tell you that. And when you experience inflation, when you're on a fixed income, it's tremendously difficult. But even small changes in the rate of inflation, or seemingly small ones, can really lead to massive changes. For example, if you're facing 2% inflation, that means that prices roughly double every 35 years. If you're looking at 4% inflation instead, those same prices double only in 17 years. A huge change to your budget.
And obviously, this also then influences your overall spending habits and your withdrawal rate over time. These are things that you have to account for in your planning. You can't just assume that you're going to necessarily see the same kind of inflation that you've seen previously in retirement.
Yeah, look, I think generally speaking, over the course of the last 20 years, while there have been massive drawdowns in equities, the inflation figure has remained relatively stable. If you're worried about something that could look different from that over the course of the next 20 years, then it's important to really consider what that would mean for you.
Our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan, and there are two ways you can request it. The first is by calling 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. That phone number again is 800-393-4001, or request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We pride ourselves on being able to support veterans in their time of greatest need, ensuring they receive the protections they deserve. For over 100 years, the DAV of Massachusetts has helped thousands of veterans with housing, transportation, and medical assistance, and you can help too. Please visit dav5k.boston and make a donation today. That's dav5k.boston.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Paul Lane.
Chuck, Paul, and Tucker with you here on a Fed Day. The Federal Reserve Open Market Committee has been meeting since yesterday. They don't actually just meet at 2 p.m. and vote quickly. We get the results of what they decided to do at 2 p.m. But Jay Powell and the gang have been meeting. Lisa Cook is there. Stephen Moran is there. So it's one of the most... Not to get all Bachelor on you, but it's the most dramatic season of the Fed ever, Paul. And that's what we have as we enter today's Fed meeting. It's widely expected that the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates by 0.25%. Outside chance that they cut by 0.5%, but I would say that would be very surprising if they moved forward in that direction. Also very likely that you have at least a couple of dissents to the 50 basis point side of things. The open question, I think, is do you get one or two dissents to the other side, maybe saying, hey, keep rates steady because we're concerned about inflation. I don't know if we're going to see that, but we might. Other things that are going to be very interesting, we get a summary of economic projections today, the SEP, which is also referred to as the dot plot. Basically, where do Fed officials think unemployment, GDP growth, interest rates, and inflation are going to be by the end of this year, the end of next year, and in the long run. And so it all adds up to the most dramatic season in Fed history. Your thoughts, Paul?
The meeting today, the biggest focus is going to be more on the drama like you would see on The Bachelor or other reality shows out there, and less what
Jay
is
Powell,
actually...
do you accept this rose?
less than what is actually going to what are the results going to be from the meeting? Because we know it's very telegraphed, or rather telegraphed, that we're going to see that 0.25% cut, but a lot more of the discussion points are going to be around the dissents or the quarterly economic projections, and what do these new appointees, in Stephen Merriam's case, perhaps, what feedback are we able to parse out from his appointment, as well as any of the quarterly economic projections that deviate from perhaps consensus. And then, as you alluded to, the dissenting piece, that really is going to be the major focus with those quarterly economic projections. Because we are so close to the end of the year, any sort of projections as to where interest rates are going to end this year by the Fed members is going to be really heavily considered, because there's only a couple months left in the year. So we're going to have a really good sense for what the Fed feels like they need to do over the course of the next couple meetings. Of course, those projections are always subject to change, but right now we have it where it's 3 rate cuts that they're projected by the end of the year, right?
So that's what the Chicago Mercantile Exchange has right now. So I think the SEP is going to be the most interesting part of this, because quite honestly, like, all of the noise about, like, how many dissents are there going to be in this? Like, I don't care. Like, dissents don't make
It's the drama stuff I'm talking about. Yeah,
exactly. So, look, do I think it would be great if we actually had, a Fed Big Brother? For like, would stick them all in a house for 2 days and like have cameras on the whole time and see what happens? Yes. Like, here, have a few beers, Jay Powell. Like, do your thing. Oh, like, here, Steve, you're new to the house. Like, here's your little hat with the propeller on it. Like yes, I'd love to see these things, but ultimately, it's not what matters to the economy. What actually matters is what the Fed guides, what the Fed says they're going to do, and how they guide they're going to in the future. And so, Tucker, can you get the time machine queued up for us?
Stand by.
We don't have to go back too far, so you don't need to, get the thing, too jacked up. But there we go. All right. We're going back to June of 2025. It's kind of warm, but it's also been a really rainy spring, and so no one really likes it around here very much.
All these weekends are ruined.
Every weekend's been ruined for 13 weekends straight, and people are just hoping that it's really dry the rest of the summer. Which it is. Here's what we had. In the March SEP from the Fed, they thought GDP this year would be 1.7%. They then downgraded it in the June 1 to 1.4. Slower growth. They also thought that PCE inflation in March was going to come in at 2.7 with core at 2.8. They upgraded those to 3.0 and 3.1 respectively. So basically what the Fed told us was, hey, we're going to have slower growth this year and more inflation, but the Fed funds rate projection for year-end was 3.9%, unchanged. The Fed basically saying we are willing to accept for this year slower growth and higher inflation. We're not going to cut rates into that. That's what they told us. So what's going to be interesting for me is the guidance to the end of this year. I'm kind of interested in, but look, it's 3 months away, and it's not going to make a huge difference either way, I think. Look, if we're going to be completely honest about this, the difference between 0.25% and 0.5% rate cut is nothing. When we talk about, like, Feds that make mistakes like the 1970s, or even you want to talk about, like, early 2022, it's the ones that are off by, like, 2 or 3% in the wrong direction, and you're like, guys, what are we doing here? You're raising rates 0.25% when inflation's at 9%. Come on, pick up the pace here. Like, Jay, Arthur, what are we doing here, guys? Like, this is the problem. So, if the Fed is directionally wrong by an extra 0.25%, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to ever criticize the Fed for going like 0.25% too far, because it doesn't matter to the real economy in a meaningful enough way.
No, the only reason that it would be something that's noteworthy is that, geez, does the Fed know something that we don't? Is the labor market even worse than we anticipated if they were, for example, to go 0.5% today?
And this is why I think that the 2026 guidance, which they do give, is going to be really interesting. Here's what they guided in September. This is for next year, 2026. They thought real GDP was going to come in at 1.6%. Unemployment rate, 4.5%. PCE inflation, 2.4%. Core PCE, 2.4%. So basically saying, hey, GDP is going to accelerate a little bit from 2025. Inflation's going to cool. And we think because inflation's cooling and GDP still isn't where we want it to be, Fed funds rate at the end of next year, 3.6%. So, the interesting piece here is going to be what they tell us about their path next year and where they think they're going to be. Because honestly, if they're off by like 0.25% by the end of this year, doesn't matter. If they tell us, hey, we think unemployment is going to be 4.6 or 4.7, and GDP growth is going to be 1.2, and PCE is going to be 2.3 now, they're telling you, yeah, we think there's a problem in the economy that's going to materialize, and we got to cut in order to get in front of it. The interesting one to me, given all the talk about the labor market, and not just labor demand, but labor supply, we've talked about this a ton the last couple months, in that the combination of baby boomer retirements and immigrant deportations is creating a labor force that is growing at a much slower rate than last year, or potentially even shrinking very slightly this year. And so could you end up with like something weird where the Fed says, hey, GDP growth next year is going to be, 1.6 still. The unemployment rate we think is going to be 4.2. PCE inflation is going to be like 2.7, so hotter than they thought. But we're still going to cut because we can't control labor supply, and we see real risk to labor demand if we don't cut. Like these are some of the just weird things that we have to consider right now, because the labor market is, quite honestly, in a place where we have never seen it as Americans before. There's never been a time when we've had good economic data where we've been able to say, hey, there are real questions about labor supply as a limiting factor in the job market.
No, it's a subject that's you've never had to think about
America
before.
did not exist when the bubonic plague was, a big thing. And we didn't have economic statistics that were reliable back then either.
And it seems like, unless I've missed something, is there really a good statistic to track the supply piece?
It's all estimates.
Yeah.
We have no idea what's actually going on with labor supply. The estimates that we've seen, that I've seen personally, are that anywhere between 300,000 and 1.5 million immigrants are no longer in the labor force now. But that's a wide range. I mean, that's almost 1% of the total working population that you're talking about there in that range of estimates. And so there are vastly different things that means depending on, how the labor market and the economy progresses. So no one has a really good handle on it. I don't profess to, and anyone who does, I kind of say, okay, like, what'd you do? Go and interview 330 million people? And it's...
We should eventually get the retirement data. Doesn't the Dallas Fed do a sort of gauge onto how many people have left the workforce? Obviously, that will be so backward looking. 2
years. Yeah. We're going to get in like 2027 and be like, oh, that's what happened with like retirements this year.
Right.
Great. But yeah, it's messy, and no one has a great handle on this stuff. So let's take a quick break here. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the economy right now, because we're really seeing an extension of what was talked about a couple of years ago with this idea of a K-shaped economy. How do you make an economy look like a K? We'll tell you in a bit, okay?
Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Subscribe to our page and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Artificial intelligence is changing the way companies invest and how markets move. Add to that global trends like international outperformance, a weakening dollar, and shifting bond yields, and you've got a complex landscape for investors. This is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you understand what it all means. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th, or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. Call 800-393-4001 to reserve your your seat. We'll talk about how diversification and preparation may help you navigate uncertainty so your plan is ready. Don't miss this chance to get a clearer picture of your financial future. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Every dollar you've saved in retirement accounts and life insurance tells a story of hard work, smart choices, and the future you envision for your family. One way to help that story end well is to make a beneficiary choice that does more. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection, explains how naming your estate as the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can add a layer of tax efficiency and nursing home protection, while still allowing your spouse access when it matters. It's about keeping more of what you've built working for your loved ones now and in the years to come. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Miss any of the show? Catch up at your convenience by visiting financialexchangeshow.com and clicking the on-demand icon where you'll find all of our interviews and full shows. This is your home for the latest business and financial news in New England and around the country. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. Looking for a getaway that's easy, warm, and unforgettable? Discover the magic of the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Just a short flight from New England with no passport needed and no money to exchange. Soak up the sun, stroll along white sand beaches, and feel the rhythm of the heartbeat of the islands. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Plan your fall escape now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Piece in the Wall Street Journal, the two-speed economy is back as low-income Americans give up gains, and this is something that is starting to become very apparent in the economic data that we've been getting this year, which is that, hey, if you look at, whether you're looking at broad economic data or companies that are reporting earnings, there's a clear divergence where, just as an example, yesterday, United CEO comes out and says, yeah, like we're seeing a real resurgence and a real like growth in high-end bookings, but main cabin is still flat to down. And basically what that tells you is, hey, if someone has the money to be booking, first class or business class or those kinds of seats, they're doing it now, and they're doing it in higher numbers than they were previously. If you are sitting in the back of the plane with everyone else and saying, hey, how come, I'm not getting, 8 blankets and 42 pillows and stuff like that? Yeah, those bookings are down because the average American is struggling at this point with wage growth that is slowing, price growth that is increasing, and it's pretty uncomfortable for most folks out there.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to watch. What you saw coming out of the pandemic era is the lower income earners actually did get a substantial amount of wage gains during that period of time, from call it 2019 to 2024, where we saw about 15% growth in real hourly wages over that 5-year span of 19 to 24 for those lower income earners. What we've seen more recently is the lower income earner growth has not kept up with the earnings growth of the top third of the economy. The salary growth that those lower income earners have seen is about 1% year over year as of August, compared to 3.5+% for those in the top third of income earnings. And we've covered this on yesterday's show, but really from a spending perspective, we had the retail sales report that came out yesterday that was a little bit stronger than anticipated. Some of that due to inflationary pressure, but overall showed a resilient consumer. It continues to be these higher income consumers that are keeping this economy going. This share of spending done by those making over $250,000, which is the top 10% of household earners out there in this country, is up to 50%. And so that's a statistic that we've talked about a lot, but continues to show a trend that those high income earners are really carrying a lot of water for this economy.
Other things that I look at in terms of what can potentially, accelerate the economy and get it moving again. One of the things that we saw this morning, quite honestly, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the mortgage data for last week, but
refis were up big.
Refis up 60%.
Yeah.
In the week.
It's hard. It's easy to be up 60% when you're at like zero probably before, but yeah.
So it's not at a great level, but it's not awful. So to put it in perspective, heading into this week, refis were running at about 20% of what they were in early 21. But remember, early 21 was like the biggest refi boom in history, because
if you didn't do it then,
hey, like
you're missing
everyone's
the boat.
sitting there and it's like, wait, you're telling me I can borrow $300,000 for 30 years at 2.75%? Yes, where do I sign up? Like, what do I do in order to do so? Refi activity was also, if you wanted to compare it to like 24, was running about double what it was last year. But obviously last year was, dramatically slowed down. So this is a big jump. It's just 1 week, but this happens with, mortgage rates coming down into the 6.25% range on 30-year fixed. And if you're willing to take the adjustment risk, if you look at adjustables now, you're into the high fives.
Yep.
And so if you're someone who bought in the last couple of years at 7.25%, you sit there and you say, look, I can shave, 10 to 15% off my payment potentially. Yeah, like that's something that people are starting to look into. And so the plus side of this is twofold. Number one, it could allow even for some cash out refinances depending on, the situation. If you bought in the last couple of years, you might not have enough equity there depending on where and exactly when you bought. So that could be a question. But hey, if you're picking up an extra couple $100 a month in cash flow because your mortgage monthly payment is going from $2,700 down to $2,500, okay, it's a couple $100 more that can be spent in the economy, but it's by people who already own homes, who typically have higher levels of wealth than those who don't, and so it kind of magnifies this K-shaped economy feel that we have here.
Plus, you're going to have the tax reform package going through. I mean, it's gone through, but you're going to start to feel the impacts of that, where a lot of people are going to be probably pleasantly surprised in terms of what they see when they file their taxes in April because of some of the changes that had been made in the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, so you've got those things that are, kind of feeding into this as well here. And also this story that
again, just kind of meshes with it. Credit scores are falling at the fastest pace since the Great Recession. So first of all, obviously that framing is designed to make you terrified that we're going to have another Great Recession, man, which is really unlikely. I mean, I could see a recession being possible. Do I see like a 2008 style event happening? Paul, is there anything on your bingo card that looks anything like 2008?
It would be a total shock. We wouldn't see it coming. I didn't see that coming.
No, exactly. So the average FICO score did drop by 2 points this year. That is the most since 2009. But then the caveat is credit scores remain significantly higher than during the Great Recession. Where you start matters, not just... I know we always say it's how you finish that matters, but you also have to pay attention to where you started. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, it's Wall Street Watch and Ask Ta-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to deal with qualified retirement plan assets, and can they be transferred to these irrevocable Medicaid trusts?
So this is a tough asset in general. When you're dealing with retirement plan assets, it's difficult from an estate planning standpoint or a Medicaid planning standpoint to deal with them. Why? Because they have both an income tax component and an estate tax component, right? They're taxable when you take them out, and when you die, they're subject to your estate tax. So the general way to do this would be, one, you can name the spouse as the beneficiary of the IRA, or you can name the kids the beneficiary of the IRA, Or sometimes you can name the trust the beneficiary or the estate the beneficiary. But it all depends on the size of your estate, the size of the IRA. But the one thing you really can't do is you can't take the asset and transfer it to the irrevocable trust or revocable trust while you're living. Otherwise, it will create a income taxable event. So tough to plan for those in advance unless you name the estate the beneficiary.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide called Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 848-5699, or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch, a complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Markets are a little changed in mixed territory on Fed meeting day, where all expectations are anticipating a 0.25% interest rate cut from the central bank at the conclusion of their meeting at 2 o'clock. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will speak during a press conference at 2:30. Right now, the Dow is up by about 0.5%. S&P 500 dipping 5 points lower. NASDAQ is down 0.4%. Russell 2000 is up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury yield currently at 4.026%, and crude oil flat today, trading at $64.48 a barrel. Some more news as it relates to Nvidia in China this morning. According to the Financial Times, China's internet regulator has banned the country's largest tech firms from buying Nvidia's AI chips, increasing China's efforts to lift its domestic industry and compete with the U.S. Nvidia stock is down nearly 3% on that news. Along the same lines, Chinese state media reported that Alibaba won a major customer, China Unicom, for its AI chips. Alibaba shares are up almost 2%. Meanwhile, Lyft soaring 13% higher following news that Waymo has partnered with the ride-hailing company for the first time in a commercial deal to enter Nashville next year. Elsewhere, Eli Lilly said its experimental pill outperformed Novo Nordisk's own oral drug in the first head-to-head study comparing the two medicines in patients with type 2 diabetes. Eli shares are up 1%. Workday jumping after activist investor Elliott Management disclosed a $2 billion stake in the human resources software provider. That stock is up 8%. And Loop Capital upgraded Netflix to buy from hold, where the firm said the streaming giant has won the streaming wars with its strong content and has higher longer-term margin assumptions as its content generates more revenue. Netflix shares are up nearly 2%. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch.
This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutzke is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutzke.
Todd Lutzke does join us now from the law firm of Cushing and Dolan. The segment here is Ask Todd, and this is your chance to ask Todd your estate planning questions live on air right now. Phone lines are open at 888-205-2263. Get calling early and often if you want to ask Todd your estate planning questions, because we do have limited space on those phone lines. Again, 888-205-2263 is the number. One more time, that is 888-205-2263, and this is your opportunity to ask Todd your estate planning questions. Mr. Lutzke, how are you doing today?
I am never better. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was pretty intrigued by that story over the weekend about the duck that robbed the bank.
I must have missed that story.
Yeah, he quacked the safe.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff. Todd, I want to talk to you about beneficiary designations on IRAs. And specifically, let me ask you this, I guess. Is there a conflict or a question in terms of potentially naming a trust as a beneficiary of an IRA in order to help manage estate taxes in the future with trying to navigate the 10-year withdrawal rule that you have when that trust is named a beneficiary, and perhaps ending up with your bennies paying more in taxes than they would otherwise
like
in
income
doing so.
taxes,
Correct.
yeah.
More
Sure.
income taxes than estate taxes that they would have paid.
I think you got a great question there because there's a lot of balls in the air, right? So one would be, we haven't, when you're dealing
I had
with
someone ask me this the other day, and I said, I don't know, but I have an estate planning attorney I'm going to ask. So this is, a real question that I got from someone.
Real life stuff. That's what we do. Real life stuff. And IRAs are complicated, right? Because they do have, as you were alluding to, Chuck, they have both the income tax component built into it, and as many people forget, an estate tax component built into it. Even like with Roths, they think, oh, well, their Roths are income tax free. Yeah, but they're estate taxable.
Sure.
And so you got to remember that they have those two components built in it. Now, first and foremost, when we're talking about naming a trust a beneficiary, or in general dealing with an IRA in your estate plan, let's start. Primary beneficiary, if you're married, should probably always be, I don't want to say always, there's never an always, but mostly be surviving spouse.
Why wouldn't you do the trust in that case? Because that's specifically kind of what this is looking at.
Yeah, so generally you want it to be the surviving spouse because of that RMD, the required minimum distribution rules, right? Spouses are one of the few special beneficiaries under the Secure Act, when the Secure Act changed. So, example, if I name my spouse the designated beneficiary, and my spouse, let's say when I die is 75, my spouse gets to take it out over her life expectancy. If you look at a table, her life expectancy could be 12, 13 years, 14 years. So that's a nice payout. Better than if I name my children the beneficiary, it's going to come out over 10 years most of the time, unless the child is a minor or disabled. So mostly this is going to come out over 10 years. So there's a 10-year rule, not a lifetime rule. The old rule used to be, it would come out over the kid's life expectancy, but no more. So now it comes out over 10 years. So that's why the primary beneficiary is usually the spouse. Now, that said, what if I'm the surviving spouse? Now who should the primary beneficiary be? Well, I need to look to my revocable trust, let's say, if that's what I've done. Well, if my trust, which holds a bunch of my assets, says I leave everything equally to my kids, but held in trust for their life, divorce-proof, creditor-protected, generation-skipping tax planning all built in, well, maybe I don't want my $1 million IRA going out to my kids. So I probably wouldn't name the kids. I would name the trust as the beneficiary if I'm now the surviving spouse or single. And that way it gets into the trust, sheltering it from all of those negative creditors, or creditor issues, and even generation skipping tax problems. But to your point, Chuck, not causing a problem with the 10-year payout. So no conflict with the 10-year payout. It's still going to come out over 10 years. No better, but no worse.
Talking with Todd Lutzke from Cushing and Dolan. If you've got a question for Todd, this is your chance to ask it. 888-205-2263 is the number to call. We do still have a little bit of room on the phone lines, so call 888-205-2263 to ask Todd your estate planning questions. That number again is 888-205-2263. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, it is going to be right to your questions with Todd. That phone number one more time is 888-205-2263.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutzke every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection. Learn how naming your estate a beneficiary can reduce estate taxes, protect assets from nursing home costs, and avoid the 5-year Medicaid waiting period. Call 866-848-5699 to get your free guide today, or request it online at legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts has helped me and countless others adjust to civilian life through a variety of incredible programs. Through our local Veterans Assistance Program, we provide necessary services to veterans and their communities, such as food shopping, landscaping, and companionship, but we need your support. You can help by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
Todd Lutzke answers your questions about estate and elder life planning every Wednesday at 10:30, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Still a little bit of room on the phone lines if you've got a question for Todd Lutzke. 888-205-2263 is the number. Again, it is 888-205-2263. Let's go now to Bob in Charlestown. Bob, what's your question for Todd?
Good morning. My question concerns the income tax aspects of the 401k when it goes through the testamentary trust. So,
yes.
So if there's no surviving spouse and the 401k is the beneficiary is the estate,
got it.
And under the will, it passes into the testamentary trust.
Uh-huh.
So now I presume the trust will now own the 401k, and since the beneficiaries are the children and not a surviving spouse, is the trust required to pay out that money to the kids in the 10-year time frame as if it had never gone to the trust?
So we have to sort of clarify your question, because the question you're answering is one that I likely would never suggest. Okay, so when I talk about naming the estate the beneficiary, that's when you are married, you do that. Okay, so if you're married, and so we got husband and wife, right? And they both have, and you're saying 401k, but let's say they've retired and they've rolled their 401k into an IRA. It's the same deal, right? And so now we're married, and I've got this IRA sitting there, and I'm over 73 years of age, or 73, okay? Unless the IRA is small enough that a 5-year payout doesn't matter. But let's say it's large enough that I don't want a 5-year payout, so I got to make sure I'm 73 years of age or older. That's the first requirement. And that makes it payable over the ghost life expectancy of the participant. So that's huge. So now I don't have a negative income tax consequences. Then I die. Well, then the estate, it would flow into a testamentary trust for the benefit of who? My spouse, right? First and foremost. If my spouse has already died, well, then I usually get a call from the surviving spouse saying, I lost my spouse. What do? We update their estate plan because they're now single after all, and we need to make some changes to their plan. And one of those changes would be, okay, well, we now need to rethink your designated beneficiary because you're single. So as a single person, I probably would go back to the idea of what Chuck and I were talking about a minute ago, and that is I would probably not name the estate the beneficiary. Well, why? Because I don't have a spouse, right? The whole point of naming the estate the beneficiary is so that I can provide for my spouse just like I could if I named her the beneficiary, but at the same time, instead of naming her as the beneficiary, I am allowing her to not only enjoy it, but if she gets sick, it's immediately protected from the nursing home for her. To me, that's the big reason for doing this. Yeah, there's some estate tax benefits as well, but to me, that's a really big reason, for doing this. So if I don't have that spouse, well, I'm not so worried about it, right? Because it's mine, and if I get sick, it's outside the trust. It's subject to the nursing home. If I die, I want it to go probably to my trust for the benefit of my kids, divorce-proof, creditor protection, and whatever other kind of controls I want to put over it to them. Now, that said, so my answer, so I think your point is that your hypothetical I would never do. So if I was single, I wouldn't be naming my estate the beneficiary, in which the testamentary trust would be the children. Now, having said that, I guess the question could be, what if we've done this, my wife's alive, it flows into this testamentary trust, then my wife dies? Well, that's different. Well, that could happen. So Bob, I just wanted to help everybody understand that difference and how this could not generally be set up that way, but it could end up that it's now for the kids. The required minimum distributions will come out and hit the trust over the 10-year rule that we talked about. So now the kids are the beneficiaries. If this trust says pay it out to the kids, divided equally and paid out to the kids, well, then as the money comes into the trust, it comes out to the kids. The kids pick it up on their income tax return, and that's the end of it. If it's completely a payout, then the whole entire IRA could technically just flow through and go right to the kids. And then they can take it out over 10 years taxed at their rate. If it's held in divorce-proof creditor protection language, like hold it in trust for the benefit of the kids and, let them have income and principal in the trustee's sole discretion, which I like, well, then you have to make a decision. And you're absolutely right about this, Bob, that if that money comes out, the minimum distribution, you reach in, take it out, put it in the trust, that's a taxable event to the trust. If the trust then distributes out that income to the beneficiary, well, then they can carry an income distribution deduction and have it taxed at the kid's level. If the kid's going through a divorce and we don't want the money to come out, well, then you know what? We're going to have to pay the tax at the trust level. So, yes, you could have that issue, but it's kind of optional. So, great question, Bob. Lots going on in that question. Sorry it was such a long-winded answer. but it's important because it really does deal with what this guide is talking about this month, right? This guide is saying, how do you name your IRA the beneficiary? Not only how do you do it, when do you do it? Why do you do it, right? And same thing with life insurance. You can make the life insurance the beneficiary, and age is not an issue. But with an IRA, as we saw, the age should be at least the required beginning date of 73. That's all laid out in the guide. It explains the testamentary trust, how it's connected with these assets, and will then help you do estate tax planning. It will protect it from the nursing home without a 5-year waiting period, and all without causing adverse income tax consequences, which I hope I just explained in this to Bob in this call. 866-848-5699 is the guide, folks, or legalexchangeshow.com. This guide explains all of those things and how they work together. Call and get it, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com.
Todd, just kind of looking at that situation that we outlined earlier, any other considerations just for, how someone goes about making the decision for naming beneficiaries on retirement accounts, given the complexities that we went through?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. One, the size of the IRA, right? So if someone's trying to do planning and they say, well, I got $100,000 in my IRA. Well, one, maybe I don't care about trying to protect that from the nursing home. Maybe it's small enough that I'll just leave my spouse the beneficiary and I don't need to go to probate for that. So that could be. Or the size could be, $100,000, $200,000, even $300,000. If I got to pay that out over 5 years, well, that's not a huge income tax hit, right? I'm not taking out a ton of money. If I've got $300,000 over 5 years, that's not going to blow me into a higher income tax bracket. So maybe I don't need to wait until I'm 73. I can just set that up right away. So those are some options. And I think if you're not doing nursing home planning, certainly we're never going to be doing a testamentary trust if we're not doing nursing home planning. But I still might name the estate. I still might name the trust the beneficiary on a revocable trust. I would say you would do that primarily only if the way you're leaving the assets to the kids is to protect it from divorces and generation skipping tax purposes. Otherwise, probably just name the kids.
Mr. Lutsky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com. The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Still a bunch to come as we get towards the second hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the latest news between Nvidia and China. Also, a little bit more information on what's going on with mortgages, and we're going to be chatting gold as it continues to head towards new all-time highs. Not every day, but on a pretty consistent basis. Quick break coming up, but then we got a whole lot more Financial Exchange in a bit.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams. Your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of your medical conditions, as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818. 3818.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection. Learn how naming your estate a beneficiary can reduce estate taxes, protect assets from nursing home costs, and avoid the 5-year Medicaid waiting period. Call 866-848-5699 to get your free guide today, or request it online at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we've got a guide available this month on the topic of inflation and your retirement plan. Mike, a lot of people listening might be familiar with the idea of the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, but rare is it that we find someone whose own personal rate of inflation exactly matches the CPI consistently.
Of course, we all have different spending habits. We all live in different parts of the country and have different effects of inflation. But I think a great example here, Chuck, is during a large portion of the 2010s decade, CPI was relatively in control, and people got very little in the way of increases on their Social Security. However, healthcare inflation was pretty hot, and Medicare prices went up pretty dramatically during that period of time. And that is one area that dramatically affects retirees that doesn't play into CPI all that much and resulted in people seeing their Social Securities just not growing a whole lot during that 2010 decade. And so you really do have to evaluate the risk of, hey, here are my spending categories, and how might things like changes to the labor market or changes to energy markets, if I live here in the Northeast and I can't get natural gas and I'm instead relying on oil prices, how could those changes really affect my future finances?
Folks, our guide this month is titled Inflation in Your Retirement Plan, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. You can also request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. The guide again is Inflation in Your Retirement Plan, and that phone number to call is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Paul Lane.
Chuck, Paul, and Tucker with you here on a Fed Day at 2 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. The Federal Reserve is going to release its statement on monetary policy. It is widely expected that the Fed is going to cut interest rates by 0.25%. There is the possibility that we see a 0.5 percentage point cut in the Fed funds rate, but by and large, that 0.25% change is what is being priced into markets right now. Also, we're going to be getting a summary of economic projections. This is where the Fed publishes in writing what they think inflation, economic growth, unemployment, and the Fed funds rate are going to be at the end of this year, next year, 2027, and long-run projections there. And so we can get a sense of their thinking as to how these things may evolve over the next year or two and what their policy may be during that time. Also, if you're interested in the Fed drama, you got Stephen Miron with his first ever appearance at the Fed for a Fed meeting. And Lisa Cook is going to be there as well after her appeals were successful in allowing her to be at this meeting. So if you want, the reality TV aspect of it and the most dramatic season of the Fed ever, then yeah, you've got that today. The thing that quite honestly matters more to me is, hey, what are they actually going to do from a policy perspective? Because that is what actually impacts all of us on a daily basis. But you got to acknowledge the drama that's going to be there, because quite honestly, it is the most dramatic Fed meeting ever, even though the policy outcome is not likely to be as dramatic, though. But we do, anticipate a rate cut there. So that is going to be coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern in just a little bit. We turn our attention now, just because, again, there's not much else to say on that. They haven't done anything yet, and don't worry, we'll recap it all tomorrow for a ton of time. We'll probably spend most of, if not all of the show talking about the Fed, because I do think there's going to be a lot to chew on there. But we turn now to a topic where I couldn't be happier to take this victory lap. I could be, because honestly, I'm not sure this is like a great thing for the U.S. But
no, it's not.
But
great thing for the financial exchange and Chuck Zodda.
Gosh, I love to take victory laps on stuff like this. So over the summer, I speculated a couple of different times that, hey, even if the Trump administration approves the export of Nvidia chips to China, it's not a given that China would necessarily want to resume them. I actually had Tucker Ben pulled the audio of the show, and so let's play it right now just to hear what we were talking about a little while ago. The other piece to me that's interesting, and I said this a few weeks ago when Nvidia got the approval to send the H20 chips over to China. Wouldn't the most interesting thing be if China all of a sudden just said, nah, we're not interested anymore? And I just think it would be very interesting if China at this point in time, as they're going through these negotiations, might say, you know what? We can figure out ways to develop AI in the short term without Nvidia chips, but gosh, it would sure hurt the U.S. economy or the U.S. stock market if we just decided not to buy them right now. So that's what I said on August 11th. So that was 5.5 weeks ago, somewhere in that ballpark. And today, according to a report from the Financial Times, China's internet regulator has banned the country's biggest technology companies from buying Nvidia's artificial intelligence chips. This is, official banning today. Not, hey, the last couple weeks of, well, we might dissuade you from doing so. This is, no, we are going to ban Chinese domestic large companies from buying these Nvidia chips. And lest you think that this is something that seems like it's going to just be easily negotiated away, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang was interviewed, or rather gave a comment at least, to the Financial Times on this. And he said, we can only be of service in a market if a country wants us to be. We've probably contributed more to the China market than most countries have, and I'm disappointed with what I see, but they have larger agendas to work out between China and the United States, and I'm understanding of that. So that doesn't really sound like a person who thinks that this is just going to be reversed in a couple weeks. That sounds like someone who's kind of like,
I just lost a bunch of revenue.
That's someone who just says like, I've spent the past 6 months trying
doing
to make
so
this
much political
happen.
Jockeying.
I've been going back and forth between the U.S. and
DC.
China. I've been at the White House, a half dozen times. I've got the people I need on board with this. And you're just going to say no. And like it's the first time I've ever heard him sound a little dejected about anything.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're, the inference that you can make from this is China thinks that it can figure out the chip side well enough. It might not be as well as using the Nvidia chips, but they think they have enough that they can do with domestically sourced chips to be able to produce what they need there. The obvious question that I have next, and Tucker, I'm going to write this down somewhere just so we have it marked down, because Ben spent like an hour looking for that quote just so that we could find it to talk about it. The obvious question that I have next, the U.S. doesn't, or NVIDIA doesn't just want to sell chips to U.S. companies. I don't think you have like a real convincing case that. I don't think you have a convincing case that Microsoft is going to all of a sudden be like, hey, these domestically made China chips, do you think we should go get some of the... I don't get the sense that that's going to happen. But...
European, South America flooding with cheaper chips.
Europe, I think it'll actually be strong enough to fend this off just because they did it with Huawei a few years back. Even though they let Chinese EV manufacturers come in and just run roughshod over their auto industry.
Yep.
For whatever reason, they actually took a stand on telecom, which good for them. Like, I appreciate them doing so. But the question that I do have is, hey, over the course of the spring, there was the big presidential trip through the Middle East where a bunch of Middle Eastern countries committed to buying NVIDIA chips as well. Does China come in and say, hey, you know what? We're the biggest buyer of your oil at this point anyways. Sure, I know that you want, cruise missiles from Raytheon, but how about you take some of the stuff that we're making on the defense side and we'll sell you these chips at a big discount to NVIDIA. It's a win-win for you. Possible. That's the next thing that I look at because it's clear to me that China is looking at... It's clear to me that China is looking at NVIDIA and purchases by anyone from them as a way to make the United States pay economically without having to, do anything from a tariff or trade perspective directly with us.
This is the demarcation of a AI battle between China and the U.S. This is the official declaration. You could have speculated to this the last 3 to 6 months with some of the back and forth, but I think after... Not to say this was the reason behind it, but some of Bessent's comments, Treasury Secretary Bessent, just claiming how weak the technology was of the H20 chips, it seemed to potentially have irked China a bit. And ultimately, I'm not saying that was the main catalyst for this, but this had been brewing for a while, that since we saw the unveiling of DeepSeek and just the way that China has been aggressively going after AI, they are clearly going to make this a significant priority. In fact, they wanted to triple the country's output of AI processors this year. So this is a big item on their agenda, and you better believe, like you mentioned, it's easy to make the next jump to from a conclusion standpoint. Why wouldn't they flood the global market with as many of these chips as they can?
It's what China does.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the EV market. Like you mentioned it before. It's going to be the same sort of thing, and that's where the competition begins. It continues, I guess. It's been a competition before. This is when, on the domestic side of things, we got to ramp up and really continue to compete to be the most sophisticated and the best chips on the market.
Now, I can also make a convincing case that from a national security perspective, maybe you shouldn't be supplying China with these chips anyways. Mm-hmm. So this might end up being a blessing in disguise on that side, even though it's not the best thing economically for NVIDIA.
Yeah, it's a really hard... You could go side by side and argue it either way. If you wanted to argue, geez, we should have a footprint there and have them reliant on our technology because then we're controlling the game by buying all our H20 chips. It's better to have them with us. But then you could also make the counter argument, geez, perhaps it's not best to ship them to China. Anyway, it's kind of... You could argue it either way, but ultimately we're going to get... Our result is just... We're not going to have chips that are exported there.
Let's take a quick break, and when we return, let's do a little bit of trivia, and then we'll talk about I want to talk more about the electricity demands of all this AI data center construction because they are enormous, and we do have a piece from the Wall Street Journal that's trying to make the case, hey, AI can actually help us consume less energy. We'll talk about whether that's realistic or just a bunch of poppycock right after this.
The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132, weekdays from 11 to noon. Get the latest business and financial news from across the country and around the world, and keep up to date on how it might affect your wallet. That's the Financial Exchange, weekdays from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection. Learn how naming your estate a beneficiary can reduce estate taxes, protect assets from nursing home costs, and avoid the 5-year Medicaid waiting period. Call 866-848-5699 to get your free guide today, or request it online at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts has helped me and countless others adjust to civilian life through a variety of incredible programs. Through our local Veterans Assistance Program, we provide necessary services to veterans and their communities, such as food shopping, landscaping, and companionship, but we need your support. You can help by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Inflation, housing costs, and rising interest rates are putting pressure on families everywhere. From higher insurance and taxes to volatile markets, today's economic landscape is changing fast. This is Chuck Zodda from the Armstrong Advisory Group. We're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall, first at Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod on October 9th, and next at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. Call 800-393-4001 to reserve your spot. We'll discuss how to manage risk, protect your retirement, and create a plan that can handle economic ups and downs. Whether it's core inflation, market volatility, or policy changes, you'll learn about strategies that may help you plan smarter. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
Text us at 617-362-1385 with your comments and questions about today's show, and let us know what you think about the stories we are covering. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange. And on this day in 2019, San Francisco Giants outfielder Mike Yastrzemski hit a home run in his first game at Boston's Fenway Park, the longtime home field of his grandfather, Carl Yastrzemski. Yaz. So, trivia question today. How many seasons did Yaz play for the Boston Red Sox? And that would be Carl Yastrzemski. How many seasons did Yaz play for the Boston Red Sox? That is our trivia question today. Be the 5th person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer. and you win a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Once again, the fifth correct response to text us to the number 617-362-1385 will win that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Piece in the Wall Street Journal. AI is going to consume a lot of energy. It can also help us consume less. Discuss.
Chuck, this piece, this is ridiculous. I get what they're trying to go for here, but I just am not buying the reasoning for it. So basically what's laid out in this Wall Street Journal piece is that with the use of AI, it will allow for companies to be more efficient and utilize this technology to cut down on time sitting in traffic, to improve their freight businesses, to improve marine freight, all these different areas where a lot of gas and fuel is burned, increasing carbon emissions. And the reason I think it's absolutely preposterous is we've talked about the demand that this is going to create on the grid. It is going to be tremendous, and we've already seen electricity prices ticking up because of some of this demand, and it's probably only going to compound and get worse because there's a lot of demand out there for these data centers. To think over the last 10 or 15 years that companies haven't been using this type of technology to optimize their routes, to track performance of their vehicles is just ludicrous. Like this isn't new. Just because you call something AI doesn't mean that Uber Freight or Amazon or many of these other companies over the last decade haven't been using technology to analyze their cost structure as much as possible in their trucks. So that is my rant.
Yeah, a couple different things on this. The first is the AI technology that we've largely been talking about for the last 3 years is known as LLMs, large language models, which are basically, hey, here's trillions of different, combinations of words that have been used historically. I'm going to ask you a question, and based on like the data set that I trained you on, all those different words, you're going to spit something back to me. The really interesting thing, the way that LLMs learn how to use what words go in certain places is basically how your kids do. It's kind of cool. Like when you're teaching like a 2-year-old how to speak, you don't say, well, here's what the word "the" means. They like repeat you and learn the context of different phrases, and they pick it up as they go. LLMs are kind of the same thing. It's just that instead of training them, through a few words they pick up every, week or month at first, hey, here's like 5 trillion words, like go figure out how to deal with this. The stuff that we're talking about here, like they're giving an example of airlines are using AI to help with dynamic route planning by understanding like where the wind's blowing, and that's called machine learning, and that's stuff that's been going on for 10, 15 years now. I've had conversations with like friends of mine who have been doing this literally since, 2013, 2012, somewhere in that ballpark. So the stuff that we're talking about now with large language models, that's the stuff that's causing the real ramp up in data center building. It's not United saying, well, we want to know which way the wind's blowing. Like, no, like there's a reason why United is not building their own data centers. It's because they just don't need that much compute capacity to figure that out. You do need a bunch of compute capacity when, idiots like me are throwing stuff in like, hey, give me 4 good chicken recipes to make if I have these things in the fridge. Like, okay, yeah, you need a bunch of compute capacity in order to figure that stuff out when, hundreds of millions of people are starting to use this stuff. The other piece, I'm going to, just do like a comparison here, man. Americans wasted 3.3 billion gallons of gasoline and diesel fuel in 2022. Over 215,000 barrels a day. So, here's the thing about 215,000 barrels a day. I'm not saying it's not consequential, but what I am saying is the United States in any given day uses like 18 to 19 million barrels a day. Somewhere in that ballpark. So 215,000 barrels a day of gas wasted sitting in traffic is like 1% of our total. Right now, the projections for AI electricity usage, for data center electricity usage, is that it's going to go from being about 4% of our electricity usage last year to 12% in 2028. So you're telling me if AI, and by the way, it's not, these large language models won't do it, but hey, if AI can somehow get rid of all traffic, let me repeat how ridiculous that is. If AI can somehow get rid of all traffic it can save us about 1% of our daily gas usage. But the electricity usage by the AI is going to go from 4% to 12%. Something's not mathing in the math, Paul.
No.
And so this even is before you get to the point that, hey, generally, when you make it so that you have less demand for something and thus the cost of it goes down, you get into Javon's paradox, which is, hey, as you make something cheaper, people buy more of it, and so you don't actually get these savings that you do. Most notably, in things like energy. When energy becomes cheaper, people don't say, well, I'm going to use less of it. They say, no, I'm going to use more. I have all this money I saved. I can, I need more energy now in order to do more stuff.
I just can't get over it's, reiterating points that have been going on for decades plus in these businesses. These tactics have been used. You have to believe Amazon and all these sophisticated companies, they're always looking at their bottom line to cut their expenses and how they can increase profitability. So the fact that they have however many hundreds of thousands of trucks driving around on a daily basis, that they're not studying that, you're out of your mind if they haven't been, they haven't been doing this.
They're not suddenly going to be like, hey, ChatGPT. Can you tell me which way the wind's blowing? Yes, of course I can. Where would you like to go, Jeff? Quick break. When we come back, we get the trivia answer next.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served nearly 20 years, and we are so proud to have him and his business as a key partner and a presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. The DAV Department of Massachusetts does incredible work, and it's one of the first organizations that Mark became familiar with after his military service ended back in 1984. As Mark built his company, he knew he'd be giving back to fellow veterans who needed jobs, support services, medical supplies, and so much more. Mark works with disabled veterans every day, and it's one of the key reasons why he's such a big supporter of Dan Stack, the DAV Department of Massachusetts, and the DAV 5K Boston. You can join Mark Vonner and his team and make a donation to the DAV Department of Massachusetts or become a sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to set up designated beneficiaries for qualified plan assets from both a Medicaid and estate tax planning perspective for a married couple?
Generally, for a married couple, you have several choices. The most commonly used one is you're going to make the surviving spouse the designated beneficiary. It doesn't shelter assets from estate taxes. It just passes to the surviving spouse. It avoids probate, and it's probably the best way to go from an income tax perspective, not necessarily an estate tax perspective. Another way would be you could technically name the trust the beneficiary of the IRA when you pass. That at least will help it shelter assets for estate tax purposes and still provide for the surviving spouse. But from a Medicaid perspective, it will then protect it from the nursing home, but it'll take 5 years. Perhaps the newest and best way to do this would be to name the estate the beneficiary, provided you are over age 73 or over. That way, it goes through probate into the will. It is sheltered for estate taxes. It is immediately protected from the cost of long-term care for the surviving spouse, and the surviving spouse has access to it as well.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide, Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary, right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The markets are mixed territory ahead of the expected 0.25% interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve at the conclusion of their meeting at 2 o'clock. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will speak further about the central bank's decision during a press conference at 2:30. Right now, the Dow is up by nearly 0.7% or 304 points higher. S&P 500 is down about 0.1%. NASDAQ down about 0.5% or 114 points lower. Russell 2000 now up over 1% on the day. 10-year Treasury yield is mostly unchanged and is now at 4.035%, and crude oil down 0.6%, trading right around $64 a barrel. Some more news as it relates to Nvidia and China this morning. According to the Financial Times, China's internet regulator has banned the country's largest tech firms from buying Nvidia's AI chips, increasing China's efforts to lift its domestic industry and compete with the United States. Nvidia stock is down nearly 3% on that news. Meanwhile, Lyft shares are soaring 12% following news that Waymo has partnered with Lyft for the first time in a commercial deal to enter Nashville next year. Elsewhere, General Mills posted mixed quarterly results where its earnings beat expectations, but its organic sales growth was about in line with expectations. Shares in the food producer are down about 1%. Workday stock is jumping 8% after activist investor Elliott Management disclosed a $2 billion stake in the human resources software provider, and Bernstein upgraded Zillow to outperform from market perform, where the firm said it has been warming up to Zillow's fundamental story and cited the company's recent execution on revenue growth as a factor. Zillow shares are up over 3%. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch. And in the previous segment, we asked you the trivia question: how many seasons did Carl Yastrzemski play for the Boston Red Sox? That would be 23 seasons. Bill from Medford, Mass. is our winner today, taking home a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Congrats to Bill. And we play trivia every day here in the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
U.S. mortgage rates fall to 2024 levels, fueling refinancing surge. So mortgages did see a decline in rates over the last 3 to 6 weeks, and so that has mortgage rates now again, in the low 6s for 30-year fixed-rate mortgages and in the high 5s for adjustable rate ones. Your thoughts, Paul, on, kind of what we're going to see as a result of this?
I don't necessarily know that it's going to jolt the housing market. It's been a really weak last couple of years for the housing market, but you are approaching at least that psychological hurdle of being below 6% and showing that 5% on there. Does that potentially allow for more buyers to have the confidence to go ahead and move forward with purchases? Perhaps, but I still think that there are bigger systematic issues with the housing market in general that unfortunately, going from 6.7 to 6.15, I don't know if that's enough to do it.
When you talk about those bigger systemic issues, are you talking what we're seeing as far as insurance rates, property taxes, and those kinds of things, or something else?
Yeah, basically just how we've had increased inventory throughout the country, which is a positive, obviously, for buyers out there, but just hasn't been the demand. And like you alluded to, the areas that we're seeing the increased inventory, Florida is one to pick on. There just isn't the demand because of those homeowner insurance costs and other factors there. And then in general, from a pricing standpoint, affordability has been an issue over the last several years, and I just don't see either of those things changing necessarily. Particularly in the northeast here, I don't think you're going to get enough inventory to bring down prices so substantially that it makes more buyers jump back in.
Tucker, do Paul and I have an outstanding bet on mortgage rates?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, hold on.
Thought we did. I can't remember what the context was, or
the range of 30-year fixed mortgages for 2025.
No, Paul's plugged into this. Yeah.
Well, because we covered it.
Trouble.
We covered it a week or two ago.
Paul knows he's winning, doesn't he?
Yes.
We
covered it a week or two ago, Mike and I.
So Paul had a low fixed at 5.85, high was 7.1, and Chuck had a low of 5.2, high of 7.8.
And Mike was in there too.
Mike, doesn't matter.
So what does this mean? How do I win? It's probably whoever's closest on when you take the high water mark and low and combine them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm losing right now.
Correct. Yeah, because Paul seemed very happy to be talking about this.
All right. Well, given that things are moving, given that rates are moving down right now, Jay, I really need a little help this afternoon then to get that.
I need
that 5.2.
I need to tie things up after my Nvidia earnings prediction, moving markets more than that.
Ooh, that was a big one. That was a big win for me.
So I could use a W.
Further proof that when it comes to markets, there's no one that has a 100% track record. Folks, if you have questions about what's going on in the economy right now, whether it's housing, whether it's the markets, anything else, the labor market, what's going on there, Armstrong Advisory Group is going to be hosting 2 financial seminars this fall. One is going to be at the Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod on October 9th. The next one is at Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. Both times, there's going to be a live broadcast of the financial exchange on site there, and then a seminar afterwards talking about what's going on in the U.S. economy and chance to answer some of your questions as well. Again, that first event is going to be happening at Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod on October 9th. The second one is on October 16th at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill. There is limited space there. Call 800-393-4001 to reserve your spot. That number again is 800-393-4001. You can also register at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Why is the T silent in mortgage?
I have no idea, but I know you're dying to get to this. I don't know.
It's French.
Mortgage is French.
The origin is French, yeah. It means, in French, I believe, or it's Old French. I think it comes from the term dead pledge and whatever it means in French, or however that is spelled in Old French.
Thank you, Ken Jennings.
And so the more you know. That's why mortgage has a T, but no one says mortgage, except for us.
You.
Us. Why you should own some gold. Piece from the Wall Street Journal. So, two things can be true. The first is that as a diversifier in a portfolio, there's a case to be made for gold and or other precious metals as a portion. There's also a case to be made that if all you own is gold, it's not really a great strategy since gold produces no income, no economic value, nor does it do anything to improve your life. And it's also probably true that if you're taking your tips on when to buy gold from the Wall Street Journal, that's probably not the best time to be doing so because, well, they're probably talking about it because it's done well recently, and gold tends to do well during very short periods of time and then go through periods of intense boredom for longer stretches.
Yes, they do. To be fair to the Wall Street Journal writer here, he does mention that it's doubled in the last few years. So
yeah, Greg Ip does a great job for them. I think the headline writer is the person who I have a bigger problem with, who they don't tell you who writes the headline, right? They don't tell you that person's name.
Exactly, but that's always been the general philosophy with the use of gold within a portfolio is it's not correlated to what goes on in the stock market, so having a smaller percentage in it can help in times of strife with the stock market. But it is a case that is emphasized more when gold is doing well. The last 10 years prior to the couple that we've had over the last few, if you look at the S&P 500 returns to gold, it was an absolute bludgeoning over that period of time. So it's something that gets emphasized when things are a little sunnier on the gold front.
So in any case, look, gold is... I always come back to the fact investors love to treat gold the way they should treat stocks. Investors hold gold and they're like, oh, I'm going to own this gold forever. And generally, it kind of keeps up with inflation, but doesn't do too much more than that because it doesn't earn anything. And with stocks, people want to be like, ooh, I'm going to be in, out, and I'm going to be a super trader. Look at me. I can go in and out and buy low and sell high. Oh, nope, didn't do that there. Sorry. So, ultimately, I'm not saying that I have any idea exactly when to buy or sell gold either, but it typically makes its money in short 1 or 2 year stretches, and then a lot of times either goes sideways for a decade or might even lose 50% in a decade like the 2010s. So generally, if you look at the historical track record, gold is great during those crisis periods but doesn't really do anything else otherwise, whereas stocks tend to do a lot else otherwise and obviously struggle in those short crisis periods. This is why in a diversified portfolio with different kinds of assets and things, gold can help to provide some smoothing, but it's everything in balance, everything in moderation, I guess, is the point that I try to make on this stuff. Quick break here, and when we come back, let's do a little bit of stack roulette.
The Financial Exchange is now available every day from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. Stay informed about the latest from Wall Street, fiscal policy, and breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Every dollar you've saved in retirement accounts and life insurance tells a story of hard work, smart choices, and the future you envision for your family. One way to help that story end well is to make a beneficiary choice that does more. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection, explains how naming your estate as the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can add a layer of tax efficiency and nursing home protection, while still allowing your spouse access when it matters. It's about keeping more of what you've built working for your loved ones now and in the years to come. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
It happens all over Massachusetts. In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Subscribe to our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This year's DAV 5K is less than 3 months away and slots are filling up fast. So if you'd like to participate, now's the time to register. The race is Saturday, November 8th at Castle Island, and you can visit dav5k.boston to sign up or join our team, Team TFE. Your support helps fund free rides to medical appointments for veterans and the nation's first DAV-led housing initiative, providing homes for single veterans and veteran families. Go to dav5k.boston and register today.
Paul, what do you got for me for Stack Roulette?
LimeWire has agreed to acquire Fire Festival. What could possibly go wrong? So LimeWire, for those who forget, was a company that you were able to download files. A lot of it was similar to Napster, music files and other video files out there that got shut down by a court ruling in 2010. But for many of us who grew up late 90s, early 2000s, it was, for those people who did, easy way to download a lot of free music, but obviously...
And a 1 in 10 chance of downloading a virus.
Exactly. It was a difficult dance to balance. Firefest, for those who also may forget, was subject of a popular documentary done by Netflix a couple years back where Billy McFarland had put together this fancy festival that promised models and musical stars. And where did they do it? Was the Bahamas that they
Bahamas.
did it down in the Bahamas. He had put together these tremendous hype videos with all these celebrities and influencers. And then people spent thousands of dollars to go down to the Bahamas, only to find out there was no food, no water.
No, you got a FEMA tent and a piece of bread with American cheese next to it.
It was just an absolute calamity. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, convicted of fraud. So now you have LimeWire acquiring Fire Festival's brand. So LimeWire was rebranded in 2022 by some Austrian brothers that now apparently does NFT services. And I'm confused as to what this really means, other than just two nostalgic names of companies gone wrong or events gone wrong over the last 10, 15 years. But it's in the news, so there it is.
It feels like, those Russian nesting dolls where you pull one, you open one up, and there's another inside, and then there's another inside and another. It feels like that's what we're doing here when it comes to just questionable businesses with not the best history and the potential for fraud.
Definitely.
It's hey, how do you make Fire Festival better? Mix it with crypto. It doesn't feel great. And Tucker, wasn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Billy McFarland say that they were listing the Fire Festival brand for sale on eBay? Wasn't it something dumb like that?
This is the sale.
Right, but why did LimeWire have to announce this? Couldn't you just go on the eBay listing and see who won?
Of course they want to announce it, so I would talk about LimeWire, because when's the last time you talked about LimeWire?
It's true. It's been a minute.
It's been a long time, yeah.
Yeah, it's again, I'll be honest, didn't even know they still existed, but I guess
we won't keep you updated on this endeavor wherever it goes.
If it goes wrong, we will.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
If it goes wrong, we will. If it goes well, no. Okay, great, you had a concert in the Bahamas.
Neat.
Fine. Yahoo. I didn't go. I want to talk a little bit about this study from Empower that the median emergency savings for Americans is $500. A third of Americans don't have an emergency savings fund, and 29% say they can't afford an unexpected expense over $400. Couple things that I take away from this. It's actually better than I thought it would be.
Really? Why?
If we're saying that 3 out of 4 Americans or 7 out of 10 Americans can figure out how to come up with $400 on short notice, I think that's pretty good given how many people are really struggling, or saying that they're struggling economically right now. I think it's encouraging to me that fewer than 30% of people have trouble coming up with that.
1 in 3 have no emergency fund savings. 30% say they can't afford.
I'm guessing there's a few percentage that have higher income but no emergency fund.
Okay.
And they're just I'll cut spending on something else. That's kind of my read on it, but I saw that too and was like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I thought overlap there. 500 is usually the number that is kind of rouse around my head as to a lot of people have difficulty coming up with that kind of money. I would have guessed it's a higher percentage than 29% because I often thought it was 50% of Americans.
I would have thought it close to 40 or 50. So
yeah,
I'm not saying 30%.
I'm not saying it's good at all, but just from what I had heard previously.
I'm honestly, if you look at the income distributions, to be in bottom 30 percentile by income, I think you're somewhere under 27,000. And so, again, I'm kind of encouraged that there aren't as many people with a lack of savings as I thought there were. And when you look at baby boomers saved a median of 2,000, which means that 50% of baby boomer households have 2,000 or more set aside for an emergency fund, which I think is pretty darn good.
I don't know where that's been statistically, but it seems like a good
I don't know either, but it seems pretty good on that side. So, and obviously this is skewed down by Gen Z, who, look, when you're in your 20s, let's be honest, you don't have an emergency fund because you're not making very much money. The rent is too damn high. And you're just doing what you can. And generally, a lot of the emergencies that do tend to happen as you get older, either, having kids or health trouble and stuff like that. So the need for the same scale is not necessarily present at that age either.
Definitely.
Let's take a quick break for the entire rest of the day. And Fed's at 2 o'clock today. We'll tell you all about it tomorrow. You better believe it.